How to do Exiles. It is Sunday. I'm about to leave for a little birthday party extravaganza, but before I did, I wanted to get this recorded. I just wanted to go quickly over the bloodline, the new bloodlines that were released. Got me some noties here. I'm not gonna do. I have them all right here. There's not like a whole lot really, but I'm gonna keep those off to the side so we can actually see what we're looking at. So this is I think this is Lysia. This is a very interesting ascendancy. There's not very many tri-Ellie stuff that it's not certainly not in the meta besides maybe Ellie hit of the spectrum, which is still I think a very strong skill. I particularly like this one, Sinner Saint, in conjunction with the Shadow's hidden ascendancy, which is harness the void, right? And we're essentially getting 27%, 13%, 7% chance to gain 25, 50, and 100% non-chaos damage with hits as extra chaos damage, which is a wonderful little ascendancy. I don't really know how much it's used right now, but with the fact that we're getting essentially full LE, half converted to chaos, I kind of find that ascendancy to be quite good. And this isn't like a thing like with hatred where you need to be using a fizz. This is literally any LE damage that you're doing, as long as it's hitting, you're just getting these bonuses. And I think the harness the void pairs quite well with Sinner Saint. Farewell to Flesh is an interesting. I originally thought it was kind of a throwaway. I didn't really think too many people were going to be using this. I like the idea of Herald skills being used in slightly different ways, and certainly getting more buff effect is always very nice, especially for something like Herald of Ice or something. But I think the real interesting thing is the Herald of Purity one, where you get 1% more damage for every 1% max life those skills reserve, right? And so each support you add and you link to that Herald skill, be it Agony or Purity, the cost multiplier is going to drive that reservation up, right? And so you can change it in some way to make it reserve your life instead. And then you essentially have a free damage scaling vector. And I think what this really essentially does is it really unlocks the ability of Herald of Agony and Herald of Purity builds to be played on alt ascendancies like Juggernaut or Champion and the like. Probably just Herald of Agony. Herald of Purity is not really a minion skill that is really all that fun to play. It's hyper conditional. Whereas Herald of Agony, the only condition is that you hit a target, and then you are able to get the virulent stacks, right? So I think this has much more application with Herald of Agony. I do find it is an extremely niche ascendancy, but it does essentially unlock, depending on how much you're willing to reserve your life, there are certainly ways. So, there's certain things that you can do with this, and I find it to be very interesting. And you're essentially getting, 50, 60x damage multi on two ascendancy points. If you're interested in Herald of Agony and Herald of Purity, I think these 2 points are actually quite strong. And then Bitter Heresy, honestly, is kind of a ridiculous note for 2 points. It's insane. You're getting a 30% more physical as extra, and you're getting Malediction, which reduces their damage, and then you're getting another 10% more multi, right? So for 2 points, you're getting Malediction, and 40% more. I mean, this is an insane 2-pointer. This thing is incredibly good, and I think it has many use cases, right? Anything that's going to be creating consecrated. I mean, obviously, we're talking about Inquisitor. We're talking about Devotion. This is going to give you more effect. I don't really know how that would apply to Malediction, or even if it would. I'm not really sure. But there's multiple ways to create consecrated ground. We have Bottled Fate, right? So create consecrated ground during effect, and this would essentially guarantee whatever rare or boss that you were fighting is going to be maledicted, and then you're just going to be getting this insane fizz as extra chaos, and it's just really, really, really strong. And so, while this is niche to those builds that are utilizing consecrated ground, those builds that are going to see a sizable, sizable power increase just off of two ascendancy points. Okay, this one is actually really interesting, and this is not my idea. This is my brother's, Bigu. This is really his brainchild, and it's not something that I've ever really thought about. Actually, I had to reread Rallying Cry to understand what it did. But essentially, what this does is you can take a 2-pointer and get the 2% increased attack speed per minion up to a maximum of 80%, and then minions deal 80% increased damage if you have Warcry recently, right? So this pairs extremely well with Rallying Cry, right? So buff grants added attack damage equal to 4% of the damage taken of your main hand weapon per 5 power up to a maximum of 30 power, right? And so part of the idea of this particular setup, and this can be done with specters, it can be done with zombies, it can be done with any minion that you see fit to run. But the idea is that you would essentially be Chieftain down here, pick up Sun's Roar. You always are at infinite power, you are always at max power. And then, you got Cleansing Water and Storm's Embrace for the 90% all res. That takes care of a lot of your defenses. There's still holes to fill, but you can easily take care of that, right? And then you run like a really juicy 2-hander, and you run Rallying Cry, and a very significant portion of that main hand damage from your 2-hander is then given to whatever minion that you want to like put on the field. And then you're also dealing the minions are also dealing 80% every time you roar cry. So I think this honestly kind of screams dominating blow. I didn't really think about it until literally just now. You get the attack speed, which is hard enough to scale, right? And you do dominating blow Chieftain, and you go that route instead of the Spectre route, which you could still just go ahead and do the Spectre route. I just don't think that's going to be as strong as having just a massive army of dominating blow minions, and the attack speed solves the triggering of dominating blow because it's going to feel super comfy, especially on single target with 80% increased attack speed. That's incredible. You're already using a 2-handed, right? So it's actually kind of perfect. You don't have to, but like I think in this case, using Rallying Cry is like there is a lot of potential for your minions to just hit like absolute trucks. Now, he had a great idea with this. I think it works with both normal minions. I think it works with Dom Blow. I think it works with Specters. Like, this is just a really interesting ascendancy that I think is hidden behind Rallying Cry. And I think if you use and leverage Rallying Cry along with the Chieftain ascendancy, you're looking at a really, really ridiculous minion build. And I actually think that this is going to be one of the stars of the league. I think it's going to go really insane. And it might be... I'm actually somewhat considering league starting dominating blow just because now this actually looks really good. So that's my take on this. Summon Spectral Tiger on Crit Strike. I mean, it's a bit gimmicky, much like all the other trigger on crit minion stuff. I'm sure it is probably fairly decent. I don't know how much I really like it. I think it's much weaker compared to Primal Roar. I think Primal Roar is hands down the standout ascendancy node here. And it honestly, it perfectly with Chieftain because like we don't really care about Sun's Light. We definitely don't care about Flame's Advance. Death Fury is nice, but we're running a minion build. Our Claire will be more than fine. And Warcry, or this Ancestral Call stuff, it really doesn't do anything for us. So we're actually primed to take 3 and then this, and then you have an insane build. I think this is going to be crazy. Okay, this one is actually kind of fun. Precursors release. There are some builds that just don't have a lot of socket pressure. Cannot be stunned. that can be somewhat easily solved. Elemental ailments are easily solved. Take no extra damage from crits. It's probably a bit more of an investment, kind of like elemental ailments. You do have to invest slightly into it. All right, I'm not sure. I don't really think this is like that good of an ascendancy, but I think as a stopgap, it can fill some very much needed holes in your build until the point in which you can invest in those holes and get those solved without the ascendancy. King's Might, Contempt, and Heritage are all very, very interesting ones. Fizz, Attack, and Cast Spells, they're going to love the King's Might Ascendancy. 50% increased effect of Hatred Aura effect while at Max Frenzy is going to be quite strong. The other ones are good. I just think the Hatred one is particularly very nice. I also think that the Heritage and Mights are particularly very nice when paired with Ralakesh's Impatience. The Boots, where you count as always being at max endurance or frenzy or power, right? So all three of these ascendancies have some synergy with those boots and could get you a considerable amount of extra power. And I just think it's kind of interesting that those boots are going to be even more powerful in 3.27 after the fairly significant nerf that they got in I think it was 3.25 or 26. Yeah, I think this is a niche ascendancy. But I think it does unlock some power. It's just going to be on a build per build basis. Okay, so the next one, that's this is Crystal King, by the way. I don't know if y'all realize that. We're assuming this is one of the bestiary bosses, and then obviously we have Lysia bestiary boss. This is Crystal King, and then here we have Katarina. Right, so I've already had a couple of comments about Katarina asking me what I think of it. And after talking with my brother, prolonged servitude is pretty much garbage. However, it does possibly enable skeleton mages to be something of a forefront build in the minion subset, along with Death's Offering. Essentially, this prolonged servitude gives you the medium cluster jewel that allows your skeletal mages to live when they reach the point that they would had died. It gives them 60% of extra life time, and then they just deal 15% more damage while they're on low life, right? And then you can also pair this with Death's Offering to damage or to kill affected damageable targets after the offering duration expires. I'm sure there's some interaction there. And you can pair your mages with the Fleshcrafter to convert their max life to max energy and possibly run crit and do some Ancient Skull buffoonery, Infernal Legion. There's a couple of different ways to reliably reduce the life to low life of your minions. Dark Pact is certainly one of them. I'm not too versed on the skeletal mage build. However, I think that this essentially solves the fact that you don't have to get that specific medium cluster. That can then be you can put that to like a damage cluster. I find that Prolonged Servitude and Death's Offering for 15% more damage, it's a lot to overcome. It seems quite cumbersome. I'm not a huge fan of it. I find it to be extremely mid. I think it's a pretty crappy way to spend 2 to 4 ascendancy points. And I think it's wholly forgettable, and you should never look at it again. But then again, I don't know everything about this game, and I'm quite sure I missed something. So be sure to check out other creators, and they might have bigger brains than I. Now, Umbral Army, actually, at first glance, I was like, this is pretty crappy. But upon further inspection, there is some interesting stuff going on here, right? Particularly Soul Rest builds. They end up having about 20 to 21 summoned phantasms. That's like 40% movement speed. That is on a Cyclone build. That's pretty good. That's very good. And not to mention that build does use specters. Probably 3, so you get 33% increased defenses. And then you have the countless Spectre builds, probably using Dark Monarch. So if you can find a way to get five Specters, plop on a Dark Monarch, well, suddenly you're at 10 Specters, And then suddenly, if you take this ascendancy, you're getting 120% increased defense. That is quite incredible. That's an incredible number. And if you're running ES, perhaps even Chaos Inoculation, then suddenly you're really having a pretty significant boost to your energy shield numbers. And so, I actually think that Umbral Army is pretty solid in terms of Phantasm and Ray Spectre. However, some Enraging Spirit, it's okay. You ramp up your cast speed, it's decent. I don't think you're going to get too much out of it. Attack damage per Ray Zombie, it's kind of whatever. This isn't going to suddenly make Ray Zombie an incredibly amazing skill. 6% increased spell damage per summon skeleton. It's the same thing. So overall, Katarina seems like they just had some coffee talk and threw some stuff down on paper and then called it good. Like this entire ascendancy, I just don't think it's worth even remotely investing in, other than the Soul Rest Inspector cases that I just talked about. So as far as I'm concerned, Katarina is more or less off my radar. And so this one is very interesting, right? This one is actually kind of fun. You have hallucinogenic tendencies, which grants the Misty Reflection. Essentially what it does, you'll dash backwards, you'll leave a copy of yourself. If that copy dies, then it creates an area, and anything within that area takes 33% increased damage, deal 30% less damage, right? That's a more multiplier, right? That's 30% more damage. I think this is a really incredible skill. I think it has a lot of use cases, and I think that if you position yourself correctly, especially on bosses and essences and anything like hyper tanky and hyper strong damage, whatever. This is certainly, I think, a generic skill that is good on really any ascendancy, and I think it's certainly a viable option to take. Just like, hey, I don't really know what to do with my fourth ascendancy. I can take this and use it when I need it, and I just get a 30x30 multi, right? I mean, I kind of dig it. I think it's really cool. And then we have schizophrenic disassociation. This is kind of interesting, but it's hyper niche, and you are losing non-cluster jewel socketed in your passive skill tree have no effect, which is definitely a hyper niche type of a setup, but it does sound interesting. There is some potential for Slayer Overleach, and this paired together being quite powerful defensively. And then we have Manic Episodes, which is a Glorious Madness ascendancy. So while affected by Glorious Madness, inflict mania on nearby enemies every second. Mania causes the target to take 4% increased damage taken. They have 2% reduced action speed and 10% reduced life energy shield recovery for 15 seconds. Can be applied, or it can be inflicted up to 15 times. That is extremely powerful. But you're also you also get hit with a touch debuff every 2 seconds. Using this skill will remove Glorious Madness and the touch debuffs it inflicts, but you will be unable to embrace the madness again until the cooldown expires. Right, so you're getting the touch debuff, they're getting the mania. Now let's have a little look at that, right? So Glorious Madness, you're going to end up getting, you could get 6% increased damage taken per stack. You could get reduced action speed per stack, 9% reduced flash charges, 9% reduced life, and that's a considerable amount. You're getting one of those every 2 seconds. Now there is a way around this. You have the mod buffs on you, or debuffs on you expire X% faster. If you can stack enough of those, and I know you can get a Ruin Graft if it's still in the game, which I think it is. You can get a Ruin Graft that also reduces the time debuffs stay on you, and there are other ways to get that mod as well. And if you can stack enough of that, then these essentially don't stay on you, which means that every second that you are using this, you are applying mania to everyone. just literally everything. This is extremely powerful. But there is an opportunity cost. You have to invest in reducing the time that debuffs are, that they're on your character. So there's certainly an investment here, but I think the investment is worth it. It's a very, very hefty cost to run it without that, because these are very debilitating touches, and the juice is not worth the squeeze without the debuffs expire X amount faster. It's just not worth it. So, but if you can get enough, this is a very, very, very powerful 2-point ascendancy. In which case, those glorious madness, comes from the Beacon of Madness boots, right? All damage inflicts poison while you're affected. You get 40% explode for a quarter as chaos. Max fortification, immune to Ellie. I mean, it's really, really, really powerful stuff. And then we have this, and I'm going to be honest, I have not ever delved into the ward area of PoE. I don't want nothing to do with it. I've never been interested in it. I really don't know how all of it works. So I suggest watching another creator that may know a bit more than I do. So honestly, I cannot give you any intelligent feedback on this. So that's what we have right now for the new bloodlines. I think we are missing a single bloodline right now. Everything else is released. And yeah, I mean, I would give Katarina a D. I think that the Delirium one is potentially A to S. Well, A, potentially S. I think Crystal King is a solid A tier. It's hard to go wrong with some of this stuff. You're gonna benefit from it. I think this is A, potentially S for minions on specific builds. I think this is actually going to be really incredible. Credit to my brother Bigu for having a nebula-sized brain for thinking of this stuff. And then Lysia, I think is going to be a pretty phenomenal. I think these 2 points right here are probably the 2 best points of all the 10 bloodlines. It's extremely powerful. So yeah, that's all we have. We'll try to do another video when the last ascendancy drops, and I'll probably end up doing a raw guide at some point this week before league start, and I'll try to get some more videos out to y'all before we drop the new league. So y'all be good. Thanks for hanging out. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Do all the things. And I will see you guys in the next one. Be good. Take care of yourselves, and God bless.